the player who never got the invite, but stole the show. There are many ways to enter a Masters 1000 tournament. Be a top seed, get a wild card, be the media darling, or carry a ranking high enough that the draw opens naturally in your favor. Valentin Vacherot had none of that. When he landed in Shanghai in early 2025, he wasn't even sure if he'd play. He came as an alternate, a backup option in case someone else dropped out. No promises, no guarantees, just one carry-on bag, a silent hope, and a belief that even being on-site mattered. Then, fate cracked open. A withdrawal, a slot in the qualifiers. No announcement, no warm welcome, just a name added to a schedule. And from there, Vacherot began rewriting the narrative. Match by match, rally by rally, he climbed. Not by brute force or flashy winners, but by something colder, tactical precision, and a refusal to go away. He didn't just survive. He dismantled names that were supposed to crush him, including Novak Djokovic in the semifinals, a man whose very presence intimidates the world's best. Then came the final, against Arthur Rinderknech, his own cousin. Bloodline versus belief, family history versus personal hunger. And when the last point landed, the world number 204 had become a Masters 1000 champion. But this story isn't just about Shanghai. This is about being cut from France's national program for lacking potential. About moving to America to play college tennis at Texas A&M while others got ADP contracts. About surviving challenger qualifiers, training solo, booking your own tickets, and sleeping cheap because there is no plan B. It's not a feel-good fairy tale. It's a spotlight on what happens when the system forgets someone, and they dare to show up anyway. If you've ever been doubted, if you've ever watched others get chosen first while you sat in the corner sharpening your skill set in silence, this story is for you. Valentin Vacherot didn't ask for validation. He earned it point by unrelenting point. Subscribe to Pro Tennis 360 because this is where the uninvited write their legacy. And the next shock? It's already brewing. A mirror for the forgotten. There are names that headline Grand Slams. Names that dominate billboards. That are shouted by commentators, trended on social media, and projected as the next big thing. Valentin Vacherot was none of those names. But that's exactly what made his story land. Because for every tennis prodigy in the spotlight, there are hundreds in the shadows. Training, failing, restarting, getting told not quite enough by agents, coaches, scouts. Players who fly coach, rest-string their own rackets, and still walk onto court believing, just maybe, today's the day. Vacherot's run wasn't just inspirational. It was confrontational. It asked uncomfortable questions. Why do we ignore athletes until they go viral? Why do federations cut kids before they turn 18? Why does the tennis world treat college players like detours instead of potential? And most of all, what if we're all wrong about what greatness looks like? Vacherot never asked to be a symbol, but that's what he became. Not just for underdogs, but for everyone who's been underestimated, uninvited, or quietly grinding with no guarantee it'll pay off. He is a reminder that grit doesn't sparkle, it grinds. And in a sport obsessed with highlight reels, he became the ultimate plot twist. Because sometimes the player we didn't plan to watch is the one we needed to see. Payoff. Not supposed to be here, but he is. Valentin Vacherot was never part of the plan. Not for the ADP, not for the sponsors, not for the journalists who pre-write their headlines around big names and trending stories. If the system had worked like it was supposed to, you would have never heard his name. And yet, here we are. The world number 204 didn't just win a Masters 1000 title. He won every argument against the status quo. He dismantled seeded players who had full entourages. He broke past narratives that say college tennis is a dead end. He won without the blueprint, without hype, without anyone paving the road before him. This isn't just a victory. It's a case study. A case study in what happens when the forgotten choose not to fade. A case study in what becomes possible when someone stops waiting to be chosen and starts choosing themselves. Because what Vacherot showed us isn't just how to win a title. He showed us how to rewrite identity, how to carry rejection not as a scar, but as fuel, how to turn no into noise and rise anyway. He walked into Shanghai as an alternate. He left as a revelation, and that should make every tennis fan and every underdog across any field sit up. Because somewhere right now, there's another player stringing their own rackets, watching from the outside, grinding through the silence. What Vacherot proved is, your time doesn't need permission. It needs preparation. And when the door cracks open, you must be ready to kick it down. So the next time you hear a name you don't recognize in a tournament lineup, don't scroll past. Watch closely, because the next shock is always one match away. Subscribe to Pro Tennis 360, where we don't just follow champions. We reveal how they're made. And if this story hit somewhere deeper than stats or titles, comment below. Share who you think deserves their own shot. Let's bring more names out of the shadows. Because greatness doesn't always wear spotlight. Sometimes it walks in unnoticed and leaves with the trophy. From ghost entry to glory. At the 2025 Shanghai Masters, Valentin Vacherot wasn't just overlooked. He was practically invisible. No main draw entry. No wild card. Not even a guaranteed qualifying spot. Just an alternate, standing in the shadows of players with entourages and endorsement deals. But he showed up anyway, with one bag, no coach, and no illusions. While other athletes posed for ADP Media Day, he stood behind the scenes, watching, waiting, not for luck, but for a crack in the system. That crack came quietly, a last-minute injury withdrawal. No headline, just a shift in the draw. And just like that, Vacherot's name appeared on the qualifying board. First match, a rising American prospect. Vacherot lost the opening set, but didn't blink. He slowed the pace, used deep topspin to neutralize the power, and drew errors by forcing longer exchanges. The result, a 3-set comeback. No camera crews, no applause, just one more match. Second round, a Canadian grinder who liked to dictate. Again, Vacherot adapted, returned deeper, attacked second serves, stretched rallies to the breaking point. Another win, another step. He wasn't just playing to survive. He was studying every surface bounce, every wind pattern, every rhythm. By the time he qualified for the main draw, he had already been in 2 wars. But no media noticed. And that was fine, because he wasn't playing for coverage. He was playing for proof. Most players treat qualifiers like punishment. Vacherot treated it like prep, like a sharpening stone before battle. And when his name finally appeared in the main bracket, he wasn't nervous. He was ready, because unlike those waiting for permission to believe in themselves, he had already chosen. Have you ever walked into a room knowing no one expected you to speak, then delivered something unforgettable? That was Shanghai. That was Valentin Vacherot. The shock that was never meant to happen. When Vacherot saw his first round draw, Dusan Lajovic, he didn't panic. He nodded. A seasoned clay courter, smart baseline player, tricky with angles. But not invincible. To everyone else, Vacherot was filler. To Lajovic, a warm-up round. But the match didn't go that way. From the start, Vacherot played like he had lived that match in his head 100 times. Controlled aggression, pinpoint returns, forcing Lajovic off his rhythm. The result, 6-4, 6-3. It was clean, no drama. And yet, it didn't make the highlights real, because the real earthquake hadn't arrived yet. Second round, Alexander Bublik, a human trick shot, a disruptor, the guy who throws underarm, serves at break point just to mess with your brain. Against players with insecurities, Bublik dominates. But against Vacherot, he found a wall. The first set went to Bublik, 6-3. But Vacherot's face didn't change. No panic, no frustration, just recalibration. He slowed the rallies, targeted Bublik's movement, served smarter, and waited for Bublik to try something spectacular, and miss. Sets 2 and 3, 6-3, 6-4. Suddenly, ADP Twitter took notice. "Who is this guy?" one analyst asked. Not in curiosity, but concern. Because something strange was happening. Vacherot wasn't peaking. He was leveling. Like a machine, getting warmer with every round. By the time he reached the quarterfinals, one name stood across the net. Not just a top seed. Not just a champion. Novak Djokovic. And if you think everything so far was shocking, what happened next was seismic. Breaking the unbreakable. Novak Djokovic. The most dominant name in modern men's tennis. 24 Grand Slams. Hundreds of weeks as world number one. Unshakable under pressure. Ruthless in tight moments. And Vacherot? A qualifier. Ranked 204th. With nothing to lose, and that's exactly why he became the most dangerous man in Shanghai. They walked onto center court under different spotlights. Djokovic, the monument. Vacherot, the mistake in the draw. But from the first point, something fell off. Not with Djokovic. With the rhythm. Vacherot played with surgical pace. Slow. Precise. He wasn't trying to beat Djokovic at Djokovic's game. He rewrote the rules mid-match. He mixed heights, changed depth, attacked with placement, not power. And Djokovic, accustomed to dictating, was left reacting. That doesn't happen to him. In the seventh game, Vacherot broke serve. Clean. The stadium paused. First set, 6-4. Commentators scrambled. Djokovic must be conserving energy, one said. But the body language told a different story. Novak wasn't waiting to strike. He was searching for answers. The second set? Tight. Long rallies. Break points saved on both sides. But at 4-4, Vacherot produced 3 winners in a row. A sliced volley, a lob return, and a cross-court forehand that caught the line. Then he served it out. 6-4, 6-4. No celebration. No screams. Just a nod. As if he'd already done it in his mind. That night, Djokovic said, he played free. When someone plays without fear, you can feel it across the net. Valentin Vacherot didn't just beat Novak. He exposed the truth. When you're not expected to survive, you can become unstoppable. The final was personal. Arthur Rinderknech, a fellow Frenchman. But more than that, Valentin's cousin. Their childhoods were filled with shared courts, family tournaments, and parallel dreams. One went through the system, the other rejected. And yet, here they stood, opposite ends of the biggest match of their lives. The final of the 2025 Shanghai Masters. Rinderknech came out firing. Big serves. Net charges. He knew Valentin's patterns and used them against him. First set, 6-4. But Vacherot didn't crumble. He didn't look to his box. He looked inward. He changed the tempo, added more loop, attacked second serves. And most of all, he outlasted. Set 2, 6-3. In the third, the emotion showed. Not in tantrums, but in focus. At 3-3, Vacherot broke with a drop shot so perfect, Rinderknech froze. 2 games later, he served for the match. An ace. A rally. A net cord. Match point. Final backhand, winner. 6-4, 3-6, 6-4. He didn't roar. He didn't drop. He walked to the net, hugged his cousin, and whispered, "Thank you." Because this wasn't just a win. It was closure. Closure for the kid who was told not good enough. Closure for every time he had to explain why he wasn't ranked higher. Closure for the boy who watched others get everything early and kept going anyway. If you've ever wanted to prove something, not to the world, but to your family, your roots, this match was for you. And when Vacherot lifted the trophy, the ADP didn't just gain a new champion. It gained a reminder. Heart still beats hype. The win that didn't need cameras. After defeating Djokovic and advancing to the final, you'd expect the spotlight to finally shine on Valentin Vacherot. But even then, the ADP wasn't quite ready to tell his story. They posted the scores. They mentioned the surprise. But no in-depth profile. No dramatic features. No slow-motion replays with triumphant music. It was as if the system didn't know how to process what was happening. A guy without sponsors? Who trained alone? Who didn't come from a tennis academy pipeline? Winning? But Vacherot didn't care. He had never played for the cameras, and he wasn't about to start. The final against Rinderknech was played with surgical precision. No showmanship, no drama, just intent. Every serve had a purpose. Every rally was calculated. And every changeover, Vacherot stared down at the court like it was a chessboard. When the last point landed, a cross-court backhand winner that froze Rinderknech at the baseline, Vacherot didn't scream. He didn't jump. He simply closed his eyes and exhaled. The ADP might not have choreographed a highlight reel, but those who watched live, they knew. They had just seen a player go from invisible to undeniable in under a week. And when the trophy was handed to him and the announcer stumbled over his name, he smiled. Not with arrogance, with peace. Because real validation isn't loud. It's quiet. It's earned. No system. No safety net. Just survival. What makes Valentin Vacherot's win historic isn't just who he beat. It's how he got there. He wasn't groomed by the French Tennis Federation. He didn't grow up in a tennis academy funded by brands. In fact, he was rejected early on, told he lacked the explosiveness, the charisma, the X factor that sponsors love. So he left, went to Texas A&M, played college tennis, while others his age were already ADP regulars, trained in public gyms, practiced with whoever was available, flew economy, shared rooms, ate budget meals. His ranking rose slowly, points earned in futures and challengers, where ball kids sometimes double as line judges and live streams are run on cell phones. And even there, he was overlooked. So he got used to building in silence. No expectations, no hype, just work. By the time he got to Shanghai, he wasn't scared. Because when you've been ignored for a decade, pressure is a luxury. And that's what the tennis world missed. They were busy searching for the next flashy thing. Meanwhile, the quietest man in the draw had been building an unshakable foundation. No one saw him coming, because no one bothered to look. When humility hits harder than trash talk, post-match interviews are often predictable. But Vacherot's? It became an instant classic. Asked what the win meant to him, he didn't speak about glory or revenge. He said, "I just hope this shows kids playing on side courts that your story doesn't have to be loud to be real." Not a soundbite for the highlight reel, but a line that hit harder than any ace. He didn't dedicate the win to haters. He didn't fire shots at the federation. He didn't cry about being ignored. He just acknowledged the invisible grind. Even his opponent, Arthur Rinderknech, stood beside him in the press room, nodding, because no one knew better than him what Vacherot had endured. And as they hugged, two cousins, once boys chasing the same dream, had taken different roads and met at the top. This wasn't just a championship. It was a reckoning. A reminder that sometimes the quiet ones have the most to say. The crowd applauded, not just the victory, but the way he carried it. Because when humility walks into the room wearing a champion's crown, it changes the atmosphere forever. The metric that can't be measured. Stats couldn't explain it. That was the first thing analysts admitted. Valentin Vacherot didn't lead the tournament in aces. He didn't have the fastest serve. His net play wasn't flashy. He didn't even top the charts for return points won. By every measurable metric, he was good, but not historic. So how did he beat the historic players? One word, presence. While others played to prove something, Vacherot played like a man with nothing left to prove. There was no fear in his footwork, no second-guessing in his shot selection. When pressure mounted, his pulse didn't spike. His game didn't tighten. In fact, it loosened, like pressure unlocked him. This was not a coincidence. It was the result of years spent in obscurity. The kind of obscurity that forces a player to decouple their self-worth from the scoreboard. That teaches you how to reset without theatrics. That hardens your focus. Vacherot didn't win because he had something to prove. He won because he had finally stopped needing to prove it. And ironically, that's what made him lethal. When Novak Djokovic said he played like he wasn't afraid to lose, it wasn't a compliment. It was a confession. Because in elite tennis, most players are afraid to lose points, to drop sets, to disappoint sponsors. Vacherot had none of that baggage. He showed the world that detachment isn't weakness. It's a weapon. And once you've tasted that kind of freedom, every point becomes a strike, not for victory, but for identity.